What is going on, Trash Talkers? We are back with another episode for you. Today we start off by breaking down quite possibly the greatest UFC event in the history of the sport. As we take a look at all of the amazing fights from UFC 256, we break down all that you need to know and discuss what is next for these fighters. Then we jump over to the NBA, where we take a look at the Houston Rockets and debate whether or not they can continue to compete in the Western Conference while starting their rebuild. Plus, James Harden may be on the move sooner than we think. We debate where he will end up and what it will take to get him out of Houston. Finally, we send it over to the NFL, where we break down Week 14 and debate who will win League MVP. All that and much more coming your way right now. Nick, normally, I ask you how your week is, but I think we're riding pretty high after watching UFC 256. I don't know about you, but I woke up even more hyped than I went to bed last night.
I don't know if I woke up hyped. I woke up exhausted. At 2 o'clock last night, I finally got to go to bed, but it was with a big, big smile on my face after watching each and every one of those fights last night. Starting with the early prelims all the way up until that main event. It was unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable how well each and every fighter performed, how this card was put together. It couldn't have worked out better for the UFC, and I'm so happy that I got to watch it.
Yeah, and I don't want to overhype it, but I don't know if you can overhype it. I mean, in my intro, I talked about the fact that this could really be the greatest UFC event in the history of the sport. And I'm not joking. I truly and honestly believe that the fights that we saw on this card, everything that we saw from the beginning to the end, is just an absolute insanity. I mean, everything you could want out of fighters, especially those who were concerned about seeing a flyweight as the main event, you got everything that you wanted and then some.
Yeah, and I think a few of the takeaways that I had from this card that we're not going to go into depth on are Gavin Tucker, an up-and-coming featherweight who absolutely went to town on his opponent, Quarantillo, where you saw the effort he put in with watching the tape, getting to know his opponent, being on the same page as his coaches, and really dissecting his opponent based upon what he saw in film and getting prepared for this fight. Gavin Tucker is a guy that I will be watching out for in this featherweight class that's already stacked to begin with. But this guy, he is something special, and I think that he is going to be some big competition for the rest of the featherweights. And another guy, and I know he's your favorite guy, I'll let you talk about him, but these middleweights are absolutely unreal, and we've got so many up-and-comers. The UFC has never been in better shape than it is now. Each weight class, and we were talking about this, each weight class from bantamweights 135 to middleweights 180 are absolutely unbelievable. They are absolutely unbelievable. They are killing it. They are so deep, each and every one of these divisions.
Yeah, I mean, you started to talk about it, but the Kevin Holland fight, I mean, you talk about a guy who, he was part of the Dana White's Contender Series. He was, basically given the short end of the stick. He didn't perform very well on the show. And when it came to the end, when it came for contracts, Dana White said it himself, there's no way I'm giving this mouthpiece a contract. I'm not signing him to a deal. And the UFC got put into a position where they were down a fighter for one of their up-and-comers. They needed somebody on 2 weeks' notice, and they were like, give Mouthpiece a call. They call Kevin Holland. He accepts with no issues. He said, okay, I'm ready. It comes in, makes weight with 2 weeks' notice, and absolutely obliterates the competition. Then they're like, okay, we may have something here. Then he comes into UFC 256 and first round knocks out his opponent in just impressive style. And not only is he crazy enough to he was talking crap while he was on the mat on his back, right? He is at the disadvantage, still talking to his opponent. On top of the fact that once the fight is over, he was saying that he wants to fight a week from now against Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah, I mean, he fought a formidable opponent in Jacare Souza. He's an older opponent, but still a fantastic fight. And I think that Kevin Holland absolutely demolished him and proved that he is worthy of a top three fight in the middleweight division. And I know you're calling for Adesanya. You want to see Holland versus Adesanya, and I think
not
we're very
right now.
close.
I need to see one before it, and I think I think Khamzat Chimaev would definitely be the step that gets us there. I think that is definitely something. I mean, based on where we are right now, I doubt it's going to happen in a week. I doubt it'll be the last UFC event of the year. But I do believe that he needs to have one more impressive fight to be able to take on Israel Adesanya, because I think just by watching him, and maybe I'm overhyping him a little bit, but the fact remains that this guy looks exactly like Israel Adesanya. He is scared of no one. He talks his game. He does whatever he needs to do, and he can strike and he can grapple. And I mean, what more can you ask for from somebody who Israel Adesanya is one of the most dominant pound for pound fighters in the UFC today, and then you have a guy who's on the rise who looks almost exactly like him. If you can have two Israel Adesanyas going at it at once, I'll be very excited for this division.
I mean, can you imagine the trash talk that would come from these two? Adesanya, who is the greatest internet troll I've ever seen in the UFC. He is perfect when it comes to clapbacks. And then you have Kevin Holland, who will just talk about anybody. It doesn't matter who you are. These two would just have a field day with each other.
Absolutely. Before, I don't want to get too far into it. I think that we need to save a little bit of that for moving forward. But before we get to what's on our itinerary for today, I do want to discuss one thing, and it's something that we kind of brushed over when we talked about this episode. Do you think that these fighters should spend more time watching film on tendencies for their opponents? Like, do you think that this is something that they need to be more aware of? Because I feel like, and not just per our conversations, but listening to Joe Rogan and DC talking about it yesterday, they were like, "Oh, this guy definitely watches film." It's like, okay, but shouldn't they all watch film? Like, I feel like that is a very important aspect of any sport that you are a part of, is to watch film and find tendencies to be able to attack your opponent properly, specifically in fighting.
Yeah, it's something that I've thought about, and I truly don't understand why more fighters don't do it. I'm in the same boat as you and everybody else when we think about this, but the only argument I can make against watching film is fighters are erratic. They don't have tendencies that they follow. They kind of do what they need to. They're going to change their approach based on the opponent. So there's really not much to see because you fight different than their former opponents. So why am I going to watch? I know that they're strikers, so I'm going to attack their weak side. I'm going to bring them to the ground, or I'm going to keep them on their feet. Do what I have to. I'm going to just attack their weakness. I don't need to watch film to get that from that, or I'm just going to leave it up to my coach to tell me this is what I need to do. I trust my coach. But I agree with you that I believe that it's just like a quarterback sitting with the coach, with his head coach every single week and going through film and dissecting it, so they're both on the same page. When they see something, they both know exactly what needs to happen in that situation. You don't want one to know the answer and the other one not to know what's going on, because when they're both in sync, that's when you're at your best. And as much as this is an individual sport, you have a team behind you. You have to work with them to get better.
100%. And it's not even just that, maybe maybe they're not in sync and one's more prepared than the other. The fact remains that, using the same analogy, if you're not watching the tape of a defense and you're the quarterback, you have no idea how they play, even though the teams that they're playing are not running your offense, right? They're not your players, they're not your offense.
Right, yeah.
You still find the tendencies. Do what players like to jump off sides on hard counts? What players struggle, on the inside of the pass rush? The same thing with fighting. What fighters try to different combinations. So if I'm seeing a left jab and then a right hook, or if I'm seeing a two left jabs and an uppercut, you can basically take that and say, okay, if I see the double jab, I know the uppercut's coming. I'm coming, and I know where he's going to be open at that exact time. And these are professional fighters; they can account for that in their head that quickly.
And that's why I was referencing Gavin Tucker earlier. I mean, this guy, he has the best approach I've ever seen to fighting. The way that he dissects film, he is a true student of the game. And you saw it against Quarantillo, where he knew exactly what to do. He knew the tendencies. As much as you're going to change your game up against different opponents, you still have these tendencies that are kind of just muscle memory. And so when Quarantillo was throwing a right hook, he would drop his left arm, exposing the body shot. So then right. when the right hook came in, Gavin Tucker knew to throw the right body shot. And then there were just so many of these tendencies that Gavin Tucker took advantage of. He was the underdog going into this fight, and he completely demolished his opponent. Mm-hmm. And that's why we need more fighters like Gavin Tucker in the UFC, in MMA in general, because these are the fighters that are going to excel in combat sports.
For sure. There's a lot to get to on this card. And, if you guys want to hear a more in-depth take on everything UFC 256 and you want to discuss this further or listen to us discuss this further, make sure to let us know in the comments. Make sure you tell us, and then we'll make a specific UFC 256 recap video just for you guys. But before we get into the rest of the card, I want to discuss the two fights that we had talked about prior to this event, and that was the Ferguson Oliveira fight and the Figueiredo Moreno fight. Starting with the co-main event, watching Charles Oliveira absolutely dominate somebody like Tony Ferguson gave me chills, honestly. And I don't want to say chills in a good way, because I'm a little upset that I feel like we've lost the prime version of Tony Ferguson.
Yeah.
I think he is something more like a shell of himself, and just watching him absolutely get dominated. I mean, just looking at the scorecards afterward, it was 30-26, 30-26, 30-26 all across the board.
Yeah.
There was no shot at him possibly winning.
No, this kind of reminds me of Donald Cerrone when he was on his hot streak, and then he lost the first fight off of that hot streak, and then it was downhill from there, and he still hasn't rebounded. And the UFC is barely keeping him on the roster. They're only keeping him because of the name value, and people are going to buy pay-per-views just to watch him. Yep. Same thing for Tony Ferguson. He's a shell of himself. He's not the same guy. He doesn't look like the same guy. He looks physically weak out there. He doesn't. He can take a punch. I will never ever discredit the amount of punishment this man can take. For sure. Him, Brandon Moreno, these Mexican fighters are built differently. They are a different breed. They are absolutely unbelievable and the best fighters to watch in all of combat sports. I mean, what happened to Tony Ferguson last night was unbelievable, but Tony Ferguson, all hats off to you for sticking in there. I mean, you should have been out of there 3 minutes into the fight with that armbar, and then you get saved by the bell. I mean, that was the most gruesome armbar I've ever seen, where the arm did not break.
I mean, we all thought his arm was going to snap, and then I had to look away. I thought he tapped out. I didn't realize that the round was over. It was because I heard everything stop, and I was like, okay, he tapped. Whew. Hopefully he didn't snap his arm. And then I said something to you. I was like, wait, why are they fighting? And you're like, oh, that was the end of the round. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it. But he is willing to undergo extreme, excruciating pain and agony physically in order to not tap out and say that he lost. He will not go out any other way than being in a body bag or knocked out. That's it.
Yeah, and it's impossible to knock him out. Look at Justin Gaethje, one of the hardest hitters in all of the UFC, and just could not get him out of there without it being a decision. That's the only way. But Tony Ferguson, if he keeps down this path, I mean, I don't know what the future holds for him. Is he going to? I'd hate to see
become the gatekeeper.
But that's exactly what I don't want to see from Tony Ferguson, because that's going to hurt his legacy. He's an aging fighter. He's getting up there. He's not towards his 40s yet, but I mean, the lightweight division is one of the most competitive divisions in the UFC, and I just don't see a spot for him right now. Right now, he's out of the top 5, and I don't know how long it's going to take. He's going to drop a lot. I don't know who it's going to take or how long it's going to take for him to work his way back, if he can at all. I mean, it just doesn't look like he has the physical capabilities of keeping up with these young guys. And I want to turn my attention to Charles Oliveira, a guy who now enters the top 3 in the lightweight division. This guy, he is unbelievable. He did something that nobody else is willing to do, and that's take Tony Ferguson down to the ground. Tony Ferguson is known as a great wrestler, a great guy on the ground, and that's why even guys like Justin Gaethje, who are all-American wrestlers, don't want to take him down to the ground because they don't want to test it out. But he went in there guns blazing. He got him down to the ground. He got him. I think he had 6 or 7 takedowns in this fight. It was unbelievable, and he smothered him. He had, I think, 11 out of 15 minutes were on the ground. He had secured ground time. Unbelievable by Charles Oliveira. He showed how versatile he is, how he's able to stand up in the moment to big competition. This is a guy that's going to go far, and I think that he's in line next to face Justin Gaethje. I think that is the next opponent. Another guy, Tony Ferguson lost to him. Now Tony Ferguson lost to Charles Oliveira. These two have the wins over him. I think that's the match to make. They're both supposed to be superior ground fighters, and we all know Justin Gaethje has great striking game. So let's see if Charles Oliveira is the real deal. Can he stand up to Justin Gaethje? If he can get past Justin Gaethje, he's the only guy in the top 5 who has not faced Khabib.
Right, but here's the thing: if Oliveira comes up, you have to have him versus Gaethje. Then in January, we're going to see Dustin and Conor 2, right? So Poirier McGregor 2. That whoever wins that and whoever wins the Oliveira Gaethje has to face off, and then we have to figure out who that's going to be for Khabib, because at this moment there's no reason for Khabib to come out of retirement. There really isn't.
Yeah, and I'd still, even if Charles Oliveira beats Justin Gaethje, it's going to be very tough to sell a Charles Oliveira Khabib Nurmagomedov fight, especially when we all know there's only one more fight in Khabib's career. You're not going to want it to be.
I think it would have to be Poirier or McGregor that he has to go through after Gaethje to get to Khabib. Because if you say he beat Tony Ferguson, Justin Gaethje, and one of Conor McGregor or Dustin Poirier, that is the perfect ladder to then, okay, now Khabib has somebody he's never faced before.
Right, and Khabib's already come out and said he'll stay retired if they want him to fight Poirier or McGregor. So we know those fights are not going to happen. Justin Gaethje, we already know we're not going to see that fight again, back to back. So Charles Oliveira is the best shot to face Khabib, but I honestly do not see Khabib coming out of retirement to fight any one of these guys. The only name on his mind is GSP, and GSP's already said he's not coming out of retirement to fight him. So we're kind of at a stalemate. The UFC, Dana White, they've got to figure this out. I think we're going to end up having to strip Khabib of the title. I think that Khabib should just stay retired at 29-0. It's unfortunate. I hate to see him never fight again, but there's nothing that is going to draw him back that's available.
Right. And I will say, I think Dana White kind of did us a favor by not giving us or forcing the Ferguson Khabib matchup. I mean, just what I've seen from Ferguson versus Gaethje and now Oliveira, we talked about him being a shell of himself. I mean, Khabib would have just toyed around with him for a little bit and then
But could
absolutely
you? I
obliterated
mean,
him.
what would Khabib be able to do to get him out of there before, unless it's a decision?
Probably break. I mean, he'd have to break his arm or something like
Probably
that.
throw him another triangle choke just like he did to Gaethje and just make him pass out. That's honestly, you're not going to want to hurt, just like Khabib didn't want to hurt Gaethje in front of his parents on Fight Island. He wouldn't want to hurt Tony Ferguson because Tony Ferguson is one of the greatest lightweights of all time.
Right.
So,
no, for sure.
We're in one of those unfortunate scenarios where the division is at a stalemate because the champion is on hiatus and probably never returning, even though the president of the company is still holding out hope that he's going to come back. But there's so much more.
I mean, his love is never going to be lost for Khabib. That is for sure.
Absolutely not. But I think the UFC is really going to start turning their attention to their other divisions, because the lightweight division is just one of many divisions that is very deep. And there's one on the rise in the flyweight division. And we got that last night.
The funny thing. Well, yeah, and we got that last night. But that's the funny thing is that Dana wanted to get rid of the flyweight division.
Yeah.
He didn't want this. He was like, he wanted who was it? TJ Dillashaw to come in, destroy Henry Cejudo on basically no notice or what it did,
and PEDs.
and then take the belt and take the division. That was the plan. Then Cejudo absolutely obliterated TJ Dillashaw while he was on PEDs, and that was it. That was the end. Henry Cejudo, his reign started. He continued on with his legacy. He retires in the prime of his career, and then they hand it over to Davison Figueiredo, who we saw last night is more than deserving of the championship. But this Brandon Moreno kid is no joke, and I think that if I'm Dana White, I am calling Henry Cejudo. I'm saying, sir, you get your ass back to the UFC where you belong, because we need the three of you to figure this shit out. There is nothing in my mind that says Davison Figueiredo, Brandon Moreno can be the only two flyweights to put on shows.
Why not?
Like this.
Why not? Why can't they be the only two? Because this is the only two people I ever want to see fighting. No. Did you?
We can only do it a maximum of 2 more times.
I want to, but I don't care. I want to see Brandon Moreno versus Figueiredo for the 80th time, because these two fighting against each other was one of the most unbelievable fights I've ever seen in my life. These two went to war against each other, and they both came out victorious. I mean, no one lost this fight. They both gave everything they had, and they never surrendered. And it was remarkable. It was unbelievable to watch. I loved every second of it. It kept me on the edge of my chair. It kept you on the edge of your chair. This was the greatest fight of the year. This was the fight of the year, and it came at the most perfect time.
It did. And what I saw from Brandon Moreno was astounding. This man, I mean, you talk about that Mexican blood. Brandon Moreno was taking absolute haymakers to the chin and not even flinching. I mean, Davison Figueiredo, after a while, he realized that, okay, maybe I can't fool around with this guy. This guy seems like he's not really reacting to the stuff that I'm doing. And then in the championship rounds, in rounds 4 and 5, they were absolutely just laying out their entire bodies. We watched full bodies fly into every single punch and kick that was being made. They were flying into each other with full power and absolutely trying to basically end their lives. And it came to a point where these guys, their chins are made of so much iron that there was just no give. They were going to break their hands before they ended up knocking somebody out.
I mean, you saw the hematoma on that forearm of Brandon Moreno. It looked like he had a broken forearm, and he's still throwing the punches. It was unbelievable. It doesn't matter. These guys will do whatever it takes to win, and that's exactly what you want to see out of a champion. Both of them are very deserving of that, and I can't wait for the rematch. And I know that no rematch will ever live up to what happened last night.
Yeah.
But even if we can get half of that, it would be a great fight. And
Well,
I think
I do want to say that Davison Figueiredo barely held on to this title, right? And a lot of it comes at the scrutiny of the referee Jason Herzog
Yep.
taking a point away from him for the absolute annihilation of the McNuggets of Brandon Moreno. I mean,
he's
a straight up
he squared him up and just it was like he was kicking a 60-yard field goal,
I think I lost my breath on that one. I was like, I mean, he was spitting up blood and everything, and then he continued to fight, and he could have called it right there and said,
as soon as that happened, I thought to myself, there's absolutely no way they're going to be able to continue this pace. And guess what? Instantly, they got back to that pace.
Yeah,
they didn't skip a beat. Yeah. Brandon Moreno is a warrior, and I will never stop commending him for the job that he did last night. I knew that he would be able to stand up to Figueiredo, but I never knew that he would be able to stand up to him like that. That was unbelievable. I mean, these guys. This fight will go down as the greatest fight in flyweight history. This is the peak. This is what you need to aim at if you are entering the 125 weight class. This is what you're gonna have to live up to. So I hope you tighten up those bootstraps and get to work, because it's going to be a long road.
And it's not just Davison Figueiredo, and it's not just Brandon Moreno. You have Joseph Benavidez, you have Alex Perez, you have Brandon Royval, you have Askar Askarov. You have a lot of these guys. Tim Elliott is on the rise. I like some of these names that are around. I think that these guys, they're not going to give us the show that Davison Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno gave us, but they are going to give us a lot of competitiveness in this flyweight division that wasn't even supposed to make it through 2020.
Guess who still has to make their flyweight debut? Oh yeah, one Cody Garbrandt. So don't forget, he's coming into the mix.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, this weight class is getting crazy. What's going to happen is we're going to see a few of the bantamweights who can cut down to 125. They're going to start doing that, because Figueiredo, he's a big body. He's a guy who missed weight a couple times earlier in his career, and no one ever thought that he would be able to be a flyweight and he'd have to be a bantamweight. And then you had Cejudo, who gave up the title because he couldn't make the weight anymore. I mean, the champions of the flyweight division are guys who are bantamweights but can also cut down to 125. If you are a true 125, there really is no place for you, because the guys are just that much bigger than you. They will destroy you. Joseph Benavidez is a true 125, and he got demolished twice by Davison Figueiredo. Yeah. I mean, true 125s, unfortunately, do not have a spot. It's going to be the guys, I mean, unless they bulk up, there's really no other way, but
I understand what Dana was getting at when he wanted to take this division away. I understand that the flyweights are not, they are not a sustainable division to hold on to, but you can't do that at the height of the division when you have fighters like Henry Cejudo, when you have Cody Garbrandts and Figueiredos and Brandon Morenos. There's no reason to get rid of the division. I mean, I do hope that Cejudo can come back, and I hope he comes in and says, you know what, I want a piece of this. I need to settle the score against both of these guys. Really show that even in the height of the division, I'm still the best that's ever done it in this division. I think if he can do that, there's no question that the flyweights jump up into the ranking of possibly one of the best divisions there is.
Yeah. Otherwise, we'll be waiting a few years until Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson's contract expires with Bellator, and then the UFC can try to grab him back if he doesn't want to stay. I mean, that's the only other competition available that's out there in combat sports and professional combat sports that can compete with Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno right now. Otherwise, Cody Garbrandt's the next best hope at stepping in and intervening between these two guys.
100%. There's a lot more to want to see. This was the perfect scenario for the UFC to be able to finish off their pay-per-view events in 2020. Give us something that we want to continue on with. January starts off with Dustin Poirier versus McGregor 2. This is going to be an absolute phenomenon. I cannot wait. There is so much more UFC to come, and who knows? Maybe next week we're talking about Kevin Holland and Khamzat Chimaev actually getting a fight done. It's very unlikely, but still possible that this happens with less than a week to go. So stay tuned. The UFC is just embarking on the greatness that it can be, and I'm very excited that we are on the forefront of being able to cover it and give you guys breaking news and break down all of this information for you guys. With that being said, I believe that that'll do it for us for the UFC, and let's move over right now to the NBA. Okay, so with everything in the UFC and the NFL already going well, and what we have to look forward to, what we're moving on to is the NBA. The NBA normally would have started by now, but because of everything that happened in 2020, we don't need to rehash everything. The fact remains that the NBA had to delay their season start. They start at the end of December now instead of the end of November. They shortened their season by 10 games per team. And right now they are in the midst of their preseason games, allowing these teams to have some on-court work and just get kind of back into the swing of things before the regular season takes hold. Now, with that being said, there's a lot of interesting things happening around the NBA, and not a lot of noise is being made about it. First of which was the preseason game where John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins were both playing for the Houston Rockets. They looked phenomenal. I mean, if you take a look at this game, if you haven't, go watch the highlights. If you have, join in on this conversation because they looked absolutely incredible, and they're going to be adding James Harden to the mix of this. This might be the best formation of the Rockets with James Harden since he's gotten there. I think this is the best iteration of this team since the James Harden era has begun, and it looks like he could be on the move. But before we get to that, do you think that the Rockets can be competitive this year in the West?
Yeah, I definitely think that they're going to give it a shot. I think John Wall and Boogie Cousins have something to prove. These are both guys that have struggled with injuries over the last few years, and they have a chip on their shoulder. And these are guys who, in their college days, were monstrous together. So I think that they're going to rekindle that chemistry they had together in college and work together. They're going to feed off of each other to rebuild their reputations and prove why they are still elite players. So yeah, having these two guys at the forefront of the Rockets team, I think that they definitely are going to make a big splash in the Western Conference. I think that they are going to give people a run for their money, and I think that they are a sleeper team going into the season.
I think the Houston Rockets need to give John Calipari a call and see if he'd be willing to come coach some of his old players in the NBA. Yeah, I mean, this Kentucky, cohesiveness that they have is now translating many years into the future on a team that nobody would have ever guessed that these two ended up with the Houston Rockets. I'm going to say the Rockets can be competitive with a little caveat. The caveat is if they don't keep James Harden, they have to bring in more players than picks. I think that is the ideal scenario in which Houston is looking for. I think if they trade James Harden, they are, and it looks increasingly more likely that happens. I believe that wherever he ends up, they have to retain at least 4 to 5 different quality pieces, or 1 to 2 actual starting pieces on top of the draft picks, because they've already started to acquire draft picks. That's for the future. They need to be able to to contend now with a team that is centered around DeMarcus Cousins and John Wall. And I think this team has what it takes. I think the Rockets have some of the requisite pieces. Obviously, losing Robert Covington is huge, but they got draft picks for him. Some of the moves that they've made have definitely hurt them. And they were both of our losers for the NBA offseason. If you haven't seen that, go check out that video. But the fact remains that John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins have an absolute necessary connection to bring this team together. I think that there's been a lot of what I call quote unquote me ball in Houston, and that has a lot to do with James Harden. That has a lot to do with Russell Westbrook, and that has a lot to do with Mike D'Antoni. Two of the three are gone. The third is on his way out. I think the whole structure, the whole identity of the Houston Rockets organization is changing, and with that is going to breathe some relief and some new blood into the system of Houston. And you know what? Maybe they're not going to be a top 4 seed in the West, but they can compete for the back end. And that back end is wide open. If they can win some of these tough matchup games, they have the requisite pieces to get it done. I need to see them put it together on the court. And like I said, my caveat of them competing is bring in actual quality players, 2 to 4 players that can be able to help you compete this year, while also bringing in draft picks to be able to compete for years on out.
So going to James Harden, there are a few teams that he has put on his short list. He originally was holding out of training camp. He wasn't even traveling to the facility. And then he finally showed up and said, trade me now. Get rid of me. And here's my list. It was originally thought that was only the 76ers, but then he added the Heat and the Bucks. So which team do you think of that list, or any other team really, that you think would make the trade for James Harden? And what does that trade include?
So he also included the Brooklyn Nets. I do want to mention that. But I think the most likely scenario is the Milwaukee Bucks. And I think they have to do absolutely everything in their power to bring in another superstar to play alongside Giannis, because Giannis is in the last year of his contract, and he is not happy with the fact that they have lost on a lot of potential free agents, including one that they had a quote unquote sign and trade for, Bogdanovich. And then he ends up going to another team in the East where he can compete for a starting job. Giannis is not happy, and the Milwaukee Bucks are in a very tough scenario that they are not a primary target for free agents to come to, even to play with Giannis, because just the Milwaukee is not conducive to a lot of people. It's not where a lot of players want to be. If they go to the Eastern Conference, they look at teams like the New York Knicks, the Brooklyn Nets, the Miami Heat, the Philadelphia 76ers, the Boston Celtics. I mean, technically you look at those big markets and you say those are the teams I want to go play for, because they're always in contention. Milwaukee, without Giannis, they are nothing. And predicated on the fact that any free agent goes there just on the simple fact that Giannis is there. If Giannis leaves, they're left on an island all by themselves, and I don't think anybody wants to do that. So just to rein it back in, I think the Bucks have to make this deal, and I have some interesting trade scenarios that have I've gone back and forth with, but this is definitely something that I think that the Bucks have to get done. This is the trade that I have. I have the Bucks receiving James Harden by himself, and the Rockets getting Chris Middleton, Dante DiVincenzo, DJ Wilson, and 1 or 2 first-round picks.
But my question to that is, doesn't that kind of negate the whole issue that Giannis had? Was he needs better supporting cast, and he needs depth off the bench, because you're removing a lot of that.
So yes, but in the eyes of the organization, they are bringing another superstar that they can build around, because if you bring in James Harden coupled with Giannis Antetokounmpo, you now become a free agent destination worthwhile to aged veterans that are looking for 1 to 2 year deals that want to just sell out for a championship. Montrezl Harrell. If you want any of those guys that are looking to that can still be productive, can still come off the bench and help you. I think getting rid, you have to capitalize on the worth of Chris Middleton right now, and his redundant abilities of Giannis do not help this team. So if they can help a team like Houston wants a star coming back to them for James Harden, no matter what team he goes to. And I think Chris Middleton is one of those stars that they would get back in return, plus a couple depth pieces. And like I said, 1 to 2 first round picks. That meets every qualification that I have for a trade that the Milwaukee Bucks need and that the Houston Rockets need for both sides to make this deal done.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I hate where the Milwaukee Bucks are right now. I think they're a sinking ship, and I don't think that they're, even with James Harden, they're a destination that many people really want to go to. I don't know how they're going to play together. I mean, Giannis is a guy you feed the ball to, and James Harden's a guy who does everything. So that chemistry might have some issues there. Plus, now you have Drew Holiday. We got to see how he fits into the mix, into that mold. I just don't know how Milwaukee would be able to pull off a trade that doesn't leave them in a bad spot. So
yeah. It's tough because they do have some other pieces, but none are worth the trade outside of Dante DiVincenzo and DJ Wilson and obviously Chris Middleton. You have an aged Brook Lopez that they did get rid of Robin Lopez, so the depth on the front court is gone. They acquired DJ Augustine and they still have Pat Connaughton, so they have some guard depth, but they need to focus on the when the Bucks were at their best with the Giannis regime, they were the biggest and strongest team in the NBA. I think they're going to lose a lot of that by getting rid of some of these guys, including Chris Middleton.
Absolutely. And, I think that there are some better spots for James Harden. And I think the Miami Heat, I think their push right now is the most intriguing. And I know they've come out and said Tyler Hero is not untouchable, but I think that he is worth more than just James Harden. So I think that Miami would make this trade, but I would see this trade happening. I would see James Harden moving to the Miami Heat. But I would also see the Miami Heat trading to the Rockets, Duncan Robinson, Kelly Olynyk, and a guy, maybe Goran Dragic as some extra depth, plus some draft picks. I think that leaves Miami in a spot where they're not depleting their future assets. They're still holding on to Tyler Hero, who is their future, and they're acquiring a guy who can help them right now.
I think if Miami does not include either Tyler Hero or Jimmy Butler, this deal cannot get done. I don't believe
I think the Miami Heat have plenty of assets that are worth a lot more. I think that Jimmy Butler holds a lot of value and Tyler Hero holds a lot of value, but those are two guys that are pillars for this Miami Heat team right now that you cannot pull away. Otherwise, the entire thing might fall apart. The Miami Heat got to where they were last year because of their chemistry, because of their cohesiveness, and you're going to lose that if you remove one of the big pieces.
I mean, number 14 for the Miami Heat is definitely somebody that is on the rise for sure. But I think this is the time to capitalize on his tradability because there's a very good scenario in which he does not become the same player that he was. I mean, I hope that he does. I hope he continues to progress just for his sake. But for the fact remains that there could be regression this year. And if you can't capitalize on what he was able to do, helping to lead you to the finals, if you remember how that postseason went, Jimmy Butler struggled. And it was the Duncan Robinson, Tyler Hero show. So if you had Tyler Hero, Duncan Robinson, Kelly Olynyk, and then added one or two players like Kendrick Nunn or Iguodala or whoever the case is, or if you take out Duncan Robinson and add in Goran Dragic, you still have to include a couple first round picks into there. Maybe James Harden and PJ Tucker come back to you. I mean, don't forget about PJ Tucker. I think he could be a relevant spot for them as well.
Yeah, there's definitely some possibilities for the Rockets to add additional pieces to acquire a bigger guy like Tyler Hero or Jimmy Butler. It's gonna be interesting because as the days go by and James Harden is not traded, the value that he holds goes down because everybody knows, all 29 other teams know that the Houston Rockets are going to have to unload him before either the beginning of the season or at least by the trade deadline. And otherwise he's not gonna play. He's a lost asset and he's worth nothing to you. So
I think the other scenarios that we need to lay out are, if he goes to Philadelphia, the Houston Rockets want one of Ben Simmons or Joel Embiid. Most likely Ben Simmons gets shipped out.
Yeah.
And then if he goes to Brooklyn, they have to send either Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving without ever seeing what that duo looks like. There's no way that gets done.
Yeah.
So if that's why I took the Bucks, and I believe that's why you took the Heat, because I don't think Ben Simmons is enough to pry James Harden away from Houston also in a 1v1. And I don't think the Nets even consider trading Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving.
And why would you want John Wall and Ben Simmons? To me, they're very similar style of on-ball guards who aren't the best shooters. I mean, yeah, John Wall can drive to the basket.
John Wall's a good shooter.
Yeah, John Wall's a better shooter, but Ben Simmons, I wouldn't want him facilitating the John Wall. That kind of negates John Wall's ability to just drive to the basket from the top of the key. So yeah. I don't like that combination. To me, that doesn't help the Houston Rockets.
I'm not high on Ben Simmons as a player.
And you had it right. These are the reasons I didn't choose the 76ers. I didn't choose the Brooklyn Nets, because they just don't make any sense. They're not these trades aren't gonna happen, and if they do, they're not helping anybody.
And listen, there's a lot of fan bases that do not want James Harden. A lot of Miami Heat fans have given me heat. See what I did there on Twitter, just because they don't want James Harden messing with the cohesion that brought them to the NBA Finals last year. They don't want to give up a package that will bring James Harden to Miami to pair him with Jimmy Butler. They don't want that. They would rather build on what they had from last year rather than go through trying to just trade the farm for a proven entity like James Harden, who, again, could end up leaving after this year is over. So that there's a whole hell of a lot that needs to be unpacked here. I think that overall, James Harden, this situation is going to be fun to watch. I'll be interested to see how he does in Houston, knowing that he's got 1 foot already out the door. But I mean, there's a possibility that he said he likes playing with John Wall and DeMarcus Cousins, and says, maybe I give this thing a go. Maybe Houston says, you know what, this is kind of working out for us. Crazier things have happened, right?
Crazier things have happened, and it's a more likely scenario than him going to the 76ers or Nets. So, yeah, it's definitely something to keep in mind.
For sure. All right. Well, a team that is not in the running for James Harden definitely has some room to grow. The Charlotte Hornets. The Charlotte Hornets are in a very interesting position right now. They draft LaMelo Ball, who is arguably the best player in this year's draft, on top of the fact that they acquired veteran free agents like Gordon Hayward and Bogdan Bogdanovic and just a bunch of quality pieces to help fill the void on this team. Just looking at where they are, and they have Terry Rozier and PJ Washington, Cody Zeller. How do I word this? Do you think that this team has what it takes to compete in the East with the likes of the Nets, the Celtics, the Heat, and the Bucks?
Not this year. I think that the Gordon Hayward move is it's detrimental, because you sign Gordon Hayward, who is a variable asset. You don't exactly know what you're getting out of him, if he can even stay healthy. And when he is healthy, Is he putting up 20, 25 points a game, or is he putting up 10 points a game? You don't exactly know. And is the roster that they're building around LaMelo Ball isn't ideal. You have a lot of smaller guys. You don't really have the big body guy that LaMelo Ball needs to feed the ball. I mean, he's going to want to drive to the basket, kick the ball out to somebody in the corner, or he's going to want to drive down and toss it around his back to somebody who's in the paint, work those pick and rolls. There is nobody on this team to do that. Gordon Hayward is the best player opposite LaMelo Ball, and I don't think that this is a great fit for LaMelo Ball's start in the NBA. I think there were better options in free agency. They missed a lot of them. They should have gotten a big body that LaMelo could work with. And this is exactly the reason I couldn't stand LaMelo Ball being drafted by the Charlotte Hornets, because this is the worst possible scenario for him to be in, where he can't thrive. The only way he is going to thrive is when he has a better surrounding cast, and he is definitely not getting it in Charlotte.
Yeah, I need to make an amend for what I said. I said Bogdanovich.
You did.
When I talked about the Hornets. He is with the Atlanta Hawks, not with the Hornets. I do know what.
Now, if that was somebody they had got acquired in free agency after that whole trade debacle with the Kings and Bucks, who knows how this would have worked out. But if Bogdan and LaMelo had hooked up, that would have been a much better situation than what LaMelo is in right now.
I agree, but I think LaMelo Ball is the best player on this team.
Oh yeah,
and that pains me to say, because I do not like the Ball family.
Oh my God, LaMelo's the best.
I know I'm a minority when it comes to that, but the fact remains, I can't stand LeVar. I can't stand LaMelo.
You're just
Alonzo's
a hater.
Alonzo's the only one I like, and I don't think he's that good.
Because he's the quietest. And
hey,
LaMelo's the most outspoken. It's gonna be great. I can't wait for it.
Well, okay. So anyway, just coming back to Charlotte, Terry Rozier was overpaid. I don't think there's a question about that. To get him away from Boston, which wasn't going to take much, they gave him damn near a max contract. And that was absolutely foolish of the Charlotte Hornets. Then, to get him away from Boston, they got Gordon Hayward. Again, wasn't going to take that much, but they overpaid to get him. You overpaid two players that have struggled since leaving Boston, right? Or one that was in Boston struggling. And then you add LaMelo Ball to this. You have Miles Bridges, PJ Washington. Cody Zeller is not really a good big. He's good on the boards, and he's good defensively, but offensively he lacks a lot. He's not going to be able to. He's going to be a detriment more than he's going to help you. This Hornets team finished 8.5 games back of the Orlando Magic last year for the 8th seed. They were 10th, but they were in the mix of the Chicago Bulls, the New York Knicks, the Detroit Pistons. I mean, a lot of the Atlanta Hawks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, some of these teams got a lot better. I think they got better than Charlotte did. So to see the Charlotte Hornets competing for a playoff spot would actually not make sense to me, because you still have Milwaukee, you still have Toronto, you still have Boston, you still have Miami, you still have Philadelphia. Don't forget, Brooklyn now has Kevin Durant and a healthy Kyrie Irving. The Orlando Magic have another year under their belt. You have the Indiana Pacers that can't be overlooked. The Washington Wizards now with Bradley Beal coupled with Russell Westbrook. There's a lot left there. This is going to be very difficult for the Charlotte Hornets to be able to compete in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, and those teams that you just named at the end, those are the teams they'll be competing with. The Washington Wizards and the Indiana Pacers. Those are the teams that are sizable competition to the Charlotte Hornets. When you talk about the top tier teams, the Raptors, the Bucks, the Heat, the Celtics, they are going to obliterate LaMelo Ball and the Charlotte Hornets. There is nobody that can't be covered on the Charlotte Hornets. LaMelo Ball can only do so much as one person, and the rest of the East has faced Gordon Hayward for the last few years, so they know what they're going up against. It's not like they're throwing in some big, chess moves that are really going to tilt some teams and some of these games they're going to play. I just don't see the Charlotte Hornets having much success this season.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think there's still a lot to left to be desired when it comes to the Charlotte Hornets. I think the East has a lot of competition right now. That even without a lot of quality additions, that the conference got much more difficult just on the progression of the players that are already there. Boston is now going to lean on Jason Tatum and Jalen Brown on top of the draft that they had. You have the Toronto Raptors, who were able to retain the services of Fred VanVleet and everything he was able to do. Pascal Siakam looks great in Toronto. Milwaukee, if they can make a trade for James Harden, that could be huge for the franchise. It'll be interesting. Miami was in the finals last year. I mean, all these teams have so much that they still need to work on, and they're already leaps and bounds higher than the Charlotte Hornets are. So I do not believe they're going to compete this year. I don't even think they're going to compete next year. I think that they still have a lot of work to do on this roster before it becomes complete head to toe, especially on the starting five, let alone with reserves and everything else.
Absolutely.
All right. So I think that's going to do it for the NBA for us today. Let's move over to the NFL. All right, so the NFL was, I guess the word is interesting.
Boring. Boring. It's straight up boring.
It was confusing. I think that's the best word.
This is by far the most boring week of football all year. Nothing spectacular happened. Miami made a late push, but you kind of knew that the Chiefs had it in the bag. There really wasn't anything that came as a surprise. It's very lackluster. Yeah. I kind of lost interest going into the 4:00 games. I pretty much lost interest.
Well, you lost interest for a different reason.
I lost it, yes.
That's because your fantasy season was over by 3:30.
Again, we're not a fantasy channel. We do not talk about this. But if you must know, my fantasy playoffs, they came and went very quickly. All thanks to, I believe, 6 or 7 of my players going out for the season. So, better luck next year, but
if you ever have a player on your fantasy team that Nick has, drop them immediately.
Don't worry, I'll let you know who I draft next season, and then you can just trade them right away.
Yeah, I mean there's a whole hell of a lot that was left to be desired for this week in football. We'll get to some of the highlights, but the Eagles starting Jalen Hurts over Carson Wentz was by far and away the biggest headline going into the week. And we needed to see what he was going to be able to do, how he was going to be able to handle this offense that different than Carson Wentz, because don't forget, they gave Carson Wentz a hefty contract. The Eagles want to keep Wentz, but Jalen Hurts semi-balled out for the Eagles. I mean, when I say semi-balled out, he didn't turn the ball over. He made smart decisions. He ran when the pocket was collapsing. He just played the quarterback position properly. He was a game manager. And if you've listened to us for many, many weeks or years, you can understand that when I say game manager, I think that's a compliment. I think that he plays the quarterback position in a risk-free manner, in the sense that he's going to hit his checkdowns. He is going to hit the open guy. If it is 3 yards, it's 3 yards. If it's 5 yards, it's 5 yards. He's not going to push the ball down the field. Carson Wentz got into a lot of trouble because he tried to stay in the pocket. He tried to limit himself outside of the pocket, and then he tried to push the ball down the field when there was nothing there. And this is what led to the change. The Eagles said, listen, we are struggling to stay in the race for the NFC least. There is no reason why we can't just throw Jalen Hurts in. Nothing's going to get worse. It can only get better. So here they are. They start Jalen Hurts, and he torches the Saints defense. It also it helps when Miles Sanders runs for an 82-yard touchdown, but nonetheless, he torches the Saints defense.
Maybe Miles Sanders can run for an 82-yard touchdown every time if it's not Carson Wentz.
Maybe. But the fact remains that the Philadelphia Eagles have a lot of questions here, and I guess the biggest question is what happens to Carson Wentz based on what we saw from Jalen Hurts.
You've got to cut him. I don't care. You've got to cut your losses. Yeah, you made the big investment a couple of years ago, and he's on the books. The dead cap numbers are ridiculous to even think of. But you've got to cut your losses. He is not only wasting a roster spot, but he's not helping. He's not going to help Jalen Hurts improve as a quarterback. He's not going to help the morale of the team get any better. You've got to cut your losses, and he's the first one to go. Jalen Hurts needs to be the future of this team. You've got to make the full commitment to him, and that's the only way he succeeds in Philadelphia is if they do that right now while he's still a rookie, while he's still working in the offseason. Do what the Texans did with the Browns. Trade him to a team that has a lot of cap space, who is going to eat the cap, and then trade along a first or second round pick. So you're kind of offsetting that money. That's what happened with Brock Osweiler, and that's exactly who Carson Wentz is. He is Brock Osweiler 2.0. He is performing. He had the high with the Super Bowl win, and then it's been downfall ever since then. He really just tricked the Eagles into giving him a massive contract. And
don't forget, he didn't win the Super Bowl. Nick Foles did.
True.
That is but Carson Wentz, he was on the team and he led them to a great record in the regular season
and was the MVP favorite.
He was the MVP favorite, but there's no telling what would have happened if he played throughout those playoffs.
That's very true. It's very true, and I think that's something that a lot of Philadelphia fans and a lot of Philly executives overlook is they thought because Carson Wentz was putting up record numbers and this team was starting to get stronger and they were getting younger at these positions that they would be able to put it together. And a lot of people were putting the blame, myself included, was putting it on Doug Peterson. It wasn't just Carson Wentz. It's the pass rush is not being protected and Carson Wentz is being trounced every single time. Well, you just faced the number one defense in the league in New Orleans Saints, and guess what? Jalen Hurts just had an amazing game where he beat the New Orleans Saints, and he's running out of these situations, so he's not getting sacked every play. Carson Wentz has legs. It's not like he's a slow guy. He should be doing exactly what Jalen Hurts is doing, and he clearly can't execute like Jalen Hurts. That there is nothing else to see here with Carson Wentz. He is a lost commodity. He is broke. He's damaged goods. He's irreparable. I think that it's just time to cut your losses. He'll be just like Andrew Luck. He'll be retired soon enough, and we'll be on to the Jalen Hurts era, and we can start to rebuild in a couple of years once all that dead cap leaves the salary cap. But
I'm going to give you a caveat, though. I don't think he's irreparable. I think he's irreparable in Philadelphia. I think if he goes to another team that has a system that can help him, trust me.
Who's going to give him another shot?
Any team that needs a quarterback that isn't going.
Who would you rather? Who would you rather have? Would you rather have Carson Wentz or Mitch Trubisky?
Carson Wentz.
Would you rather have Carson Wentz or Nick Foles?
Carson Wentz.
Carson Wentz or Phillip Rivers?
Well, Carson Wentz just because of Phillip Rivers' age. Otherwise, skill-wise, Phillip Rivers.
Carson Wentz or Derek Carr?
Derek Carr. But, okay, I understand what you're getting at, and I'd probably even choose Marcus Mariota over Carson Wentz. But the fact remains that there are teams in this league that are not going to be able to get a quality starting quarterback for the next year or two, and are going to be in a position where they can provide weapons and an offensive line. I think that is where he needs to go. I think he needs to go to one of those teams to kind of just, he needs a breath of fresh air, because you've seen more than not that when a player leaves, I mean, perfect scenario. We talk about it every week outside of the show. Nelson Aguilar, incredible player for the Las Vegas Raiders, but when he was with Philadelphia, he was drop city. I mean, like, it's almost like he had a transformation overnight, but it's just refreshing. I mean, everybody wrote him off. I mean, you wrote him off going to Las Vegas, like, oh, he's damaged goods.
For sure.
And he's not. I think the same can be said for Carson Wentz. He needs to get out of Philadelphia. He needs to get away from the Eagles organization. He needs a fresh start in a quality system.
So if he's not the problem, who is? Is it Doug Peterson? Is it the culture?
It's Doug Peterson and it's Howie Roseman. And I know all these Eagles fans, who are still living in the Super Bowl are, gonna rip my head off, but I don't give two shits. Okay. First of all, Philadelphia is the worst city in the world.
Absolutely.
Second of all, the fact remains that the Eagles, since they won the Super Bowl, have only been the drudge of the NFL. They have not been able to progress. They have lived in the past, and that is it. The only players that they can rely on right now are Fletcher Cox and Brandon Graham. That's it. Outside of those players, you have nothing. And you can say, what about Zach Ertz? Well, you have Dallas Goedert, and Zach Ertz wants out. So it's not even him. Miles Sanders has come in and he's done pretty well, but he wasn't part of that Super Bowl. Howie Roseman has failed at the highest levels outside of the one Super Bowl season, which was a fluke at best.
I wouldn't even say it's Howie Roseman, because he has brought in some pretty good talent. You have Miles Sanders, you have Jalen Reagor, and it's not until you bring in Jalen Hurts that these guys are actually working well together. So it's not necessarily a culture thing or an organizational thing with the head coach and GM. The pieces are there. Carson Wentz just can't execute. And the fact that Carson Wentz can't execute is the reason Miles Sanders hasn't been as productive as we thought he should be. And Jalen Reagor, people were saying should have been drafted after Justin Jefferson. I mean, these are extremely talented guys that have been drafted to the team that have what it takes. The guy at the helm cannot do it.
But I think it's more emblematic of the culture that they have in Philadelphia, it's not just the quarterback. The failure of the organization cannot solely fall onto the quarterback's lap in this scenario. I think there is a complete discombobulation when it comes to the front office, the coaching staff, and the offense. I mean, we're talking about a team that used to rely on their ability to run the ball with a sound offensive line, a top 5 offensive line. I mean, not too long ago, they had Jason Peters, they had Brandon Brooks, they had Jason Kelsey, and
Lane Johnson.
Based on injuries and age and not being able to bring up other talented players, they have not been able to fill those roles. And that is a major flaw in the coaching staff, on top of the fact that you have other players that have flourished outside of there. That's another failure of the coaching staff. You haven't brought in some of the right players. That is a failure on the front office. And then on top of that, you have players like Carson Wentz who are trying to do too much. They're trying to carry the franchise on their backs, and I just can't imagine that's all on him. He's trying to do too much because he's trying to save everybody's job, and it's not going to end up working out for anyone.
No, yeah, it's not going to work out for anyone, and Carson Wentz is at the very bottom. I mean, he is being hurt the worst. His career, I mean, yeah, he's made his money. He has a ring. So really, what else is there for him to do in the NFL? he's still got a legacy. I hope he cares about that. Otherwise, you definitely don't belong in the NFL. I mean, he should really be trying to figure out, how can I be the next Nelson Aguilar? How can I go to somewhere else and do a 180 instantly? How can I be a better quarterback and get better for my future destination? It's not about the here and now, it's about the future. What happened happened. You got to get over it. You got to get past it. It's not going to change now. Your replacement is here. He's taken over. So get ready for what's next, and hopefully you'll be able to do that. I hope Carson's able to figure something out and be a formidable quarterback for another team. I really do. I'd have nothing against Carson Wentz. I hope that he has success, but I don't know where that is. Indianapolis is the only other place I can think of that has a quarterback opening and has an offensive line that can protect him.
And guess where, he had the most success? Under Frank Reich, who happens to be
That's
their head
very
coach.
true. That's very
think
true.
Indianapolis was the team that I was talking about when I was talking about the perfect spot for him. If he can leave Philadelphia and go back to the success that he had under Frank Reich with a better offensive line and a top 5 defense, why not? They know what they got in Phillip Rivers. I think Carson Wentz is a younger version of that. He can sling the ball. He needs to be in a Frank Reich offense. I think that is the perfect spot for him. Indianapolis Colts need to try to get, and you know what? They have the cap space to get it done as well.
They do, but there's absolutely nobody in this world that is accepting a contract in which Carson Wentz is getting paid $30+ million for the next 3 seasons. There's no way.
Unless they get some draft picks or something else in return. Maybe Philadelphia has to eat some of that contract. I don't care. That they need to get, if they're going to get rid of him, they need to. Indianapolis is the way to go, and Indianapolis has to find a way to get either some of that money left in Philadelphia, or they need to get some compensation for taking that contract off of Philadelphia's books. Either way, it's not a 1-for-1 trade.
No, it's not a 1-for-1 trade. We're going to have to really follow this into the offseason, because nothing's going to happen now. We're not going to hear anything about this for a while, and the Eagles, after a huge win over the New Orleans Saints under Jalen Hurts, I mean, that is bright for Philadelphia. I think that their future, although it's not with Carson Wentz, is still bright, and they still have something. They still have a team that can be competitive in their division. So all is not lost for the Philadelphia Eagles just yet. I think that they're going to lose a lot of money because of the cap hit, but they're still going to be able to build up the team from the players they have on the roster currently. I think that their team is young enough where they're going to have them for a while, and they'll be able to come out of this Carson Wentz contract situation unscathed. So the Eagles just need to move on and look towards the future. All parties do. Carson Wentz and the Eagles organization.
I agree, but let's save that conversation, the next part of that conversation for the offseason. One thing I want to focus on for right now is the MVP race, and this isn't something that we talk about very often, but I feel like it needs to be addressed because you and I have very differing views on how this is going to go.
Yeah, because there's a bunch of idiots out there in the world that think that Patrick Mahomes is the end-all be-all of the NFL.
Patrick Mahomes is the leader of the MVP race, and he deservedly so.
No.
He is. It absolutely is. And this is where we're going to have a very lively debate, so please stay tuned. You can point to the fact that he threw 3 interceptions against the Miami Dolphins, and you can point to the fact that he has struggled against some top-tier opponents, but he's also setting records and becoming he's a top quarterback in this league, if not the best quarterback in this league. He is one of the greatest throwers of the football I have ever seen in my entire lifetime. And there is no scenario in which I see any other player winning the MVP award this year outside of Patrick Mahomes.
Patrick Mahomes cannot win this award when you have Tyreek Hill, who is the best wide receiver in the NFL this year, and Travis Kelce, who is the best tight end in the league every year. There's no way you can be given this award when you are surrounded by elite talent, when you don't need to worry about who you're throwing the ball to. You can trust them. Patrick Mahomes, he doesn't make many mistakes, and he can put the ball wherever he wants, when he wants, and he can run out of any situation. He can do that. He is a magician. I'm not taking away the abilities of Patrick Mahomes. But when you're talking about the most valuable player, he is not it. Aaron Rodgers is a more valuable player than Patrick Mahomes. I don't think Patrick Mahomes could go into Green Bay and do exactly what Aaron Rodgers is doing right now. I don't think he'd be able to handle having no-name receivers and tight ends and not having any help around him. I don't think he could have the same success. Aaron Rodgers would have the same success if he was on Kansas City right now. Patrick Mahomes is not the best quarterback in the league. He's not the most valuable player. His job could be done. The Chiefs would have the same success without him if they had another above average quarterback.
Wow, you are vastly diminishing the value of Patrick Mahomes. Listen, I don't think he's the greatest quarterback of all time. I'm not saying that. I think that he is by far and away the best quarterback in the game today. He can do everything Aaron Rodgers can do, and then some. I mean, Aaron Rodgers, you can talk about all of the, the plays that he's made in his lifetime and everything about that. But the fact remains that, Patrick Mahomes has just as many Super Bowls as Aaron Rodgers does at this point.
You can't look at it like that, because we're talking about the most valuable player. We're talking about the two teams that are number 2 in their conference. But you got to also look at the supporting cast. Patrick Mahomes has everybody you could want, pretty much, on a team. And Aaron Rodgers gets no love from anybody. He gets no help from anybody. He has Devontae Adams, and he has Aaron Jones, and that's it. He's got one running back, one wide receiver, and he's told to go out there and win every single game. And he pretty much does that because he's able to dissect defenses. He's able to make terrible receivers look fantastic. He's able to pick up his defense, who can't stop the run for their freaking life, and just continue to score whenever he wants to. There is no other player in the NFL that is more valuable to their team than Aaron Rodgers. Patrick Mahomes' job could be done by Tua Tagovailoa or Justin Herbert or Carson Wentz even. I would even say that. Because
Patrick Mahomes has almost 1,000 more yards passing than Aaron Rodgers does.
I don't understand
that?
I don't care. Because he has the supporting cast. You put Aaron Rodgers on the Chiefs, and he's going to have almost 5,000 yards passing and 50 touchdowns. You can't.
That's not
it's
true.
Not these. The MVP
Aaron Rodgers
race,
has more touchdowns and one less interception than Patrick Mahomes does.
The MVP race is not an apples to apples comparison. It is who is the most valuable player to their team.
If that's the case, then it's Derrick Henry. I mean, it is that simple.
You can make that argument. I'm not saying Aaron Rodgers is the only viable option. I'm just saying Patrick Mahomes is definitely not the most valuable player this season.
The only time that the Chiefs have ever been relevant in our lifetime outside of Patrick Mahomes was one season with Alex Smith pre-injury. Besides that, Patrick Mahomes is the only reason this Chiefs team is even relevant. Their defense is disgustingly terrible outside of Chris Jones. And then you have
got to give that defense a lot more credit. They're better than you think.
I do not. No, I do not. They are fluffed up by the simple fact that every team has to come from behind because they have to try to match what Patrick Mahomes does on a daily basis. There is no other there is no other quarterback that is feared as much as Patrick Mahomes under center is. It's just that simple.
Patrick Mahomes is not somebody to be afraid of. Aaron Rodgers is somebody I'm more afraid of because he's faced adversity. What adversity has Patrick Mahomes faced this season? None of his players have gotten hurt.
You don't get a score for facing adversity. There's no adversity,
but it needs to be taken into account.
No, it doesn't, because there's no. Well, you know what? You've suffered a couple injuries on your team, so you should have done this. Nobody gives a shit. What did you do? Did you do it? No. Okay, then you don't deserve it. That's the end of it.
Could Patrick Mahomes' job be done without him? Absolutely.
No.
Could Aaron Rodgers' job be done without him? Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
Yes, no. It could. Yes, it absolutely could.
No.
Patrick Mahomes is in a stronger division than Aaron Rodgers is.
That's not necessarily true. I mean, the Vikings are a very strong team. The Chargers are a terrible team. The Broncos are a terrible team, and the Raiders are a terrible team. I don't. There is nobody.
Just last week, the Raiders were a top team for your contention, and now all of a sudden
they were in the hunt. Yeah, until they decided to almost lose to the New York Jets. We're not. Patrick Mahomes has not done enough. He has not shown me why he is irreplaceable, why he is making Tyreek Hill better, why he is making Travis Kelce better. I think it's the other way around. I think that Tyreek Hill is making Patrick Mahomes better. I think Travis Kelce is making Patrick Mahomes better. Patrick Mahomes doesn't always make the best throws, but his receivers bail him out. He just dumps the ball off to Travis Kelce, who runs 30 yards up the field. He throws the ball, he dumps it off to Tyreek Hill.
So Aaron Rodgers doesn't dump off the ball to Davante Adams and he runs through defenses. I mean, you can say the same exact thing. The fact remains that Patrick Mahomes is still leading him in key statistical categories, on top of the fact that, you know what, if you want to account for injuries, go ahead. The fact remains that the Chiefs don't get injured. They have to be given some credit for that. You can't take anything away from them because they haven't been injured. You know what? It's on the players to not get injured, and they haven't.
No, you can't just say that. Injuries are fluke. They are a variable that cannot be accounted for. You don't know if or when they'll happen.
Carson Wentz should have won that MVP then, because it's not his fault he got hurt, right?
No, that's not how this works.
Exactly.
So no, I'm not. We're not talking about. I'm not talking about a player who's been injured. I'm talking about a guy who has kept his team at the top of the conference with no weapons around him, very few weapons around him. Who's had multiple wide receivers get injured. He's been cycling through players and making them look like studs. He's had to account for a bad
all
defense
around him. They have Marquez Valdez-Scantling. They have Allen Lazard. They have Robert Tonyan. They have Davante Adams. They have a.
How many of these people did you know before the season? How many of these people you knew? You knew maybe Allen Lazard. You definitely didn't know who Robert Tonyan was. I know that
who Marquez Valdez-Scantling is. I know who.
He's not a good receiver. He's not a good receiver. Aaron Rodgers makes him look like a decent receiver. He's not good. The most valuable player is the guy who can make his surrounding cast look better than they actually are. That's Aaron Rodgers. Tyreek Hill would be an elite athlete, elite player without Patrick Mahomes. So would Travis Kelce. So would Sammy Watkins. Wow. So would CEH.
That is a misstep of the highest order. You are undervaluing Patrick Mahomes. There's a reason he became the first player to sign a $500 million contract.
You're undervaluing how big of a role his supporting cast plays. If he doesn't have those weapons,
I'm not. But you can't take that away. Just because they have talented players doesn't mean you can take that away from his ability to do what he does. That just shows that
Patrick Mahomes is not everything.
He doesn't rely on them. He can do it without them.
He can't do it without them. He hasn't even.
Yes, he can.
How can you say that? We have not seen that.
Oh my God.
We have never seen him face adversity. This is what I talked about. He has not had to go without Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce for more than a couple games. I mean,
they have a much worse offensive line than the Packers do. They have a much worse running attack than the Packers do. I mean, if you want to really compare apples to
just because they choose not to throw
apples to apples,
to run the ball,
Aaron Rodgers has a better scenario than Patrick Mahomes does.
It's not true at all. Patrick Mahomes is in the best spot anybody in sports could be in. He has elite coaches and elite players surrounding him. All he has to do is make the correct reads, the correct throws, and that's it. Yeah, every so often he has some nice plays where he runs out of the pocket and makes some spectacular play with his feet or throws a great pass. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers is doing that every single drive. Every single drive.
Okay.
Maybe sometimes Davante Adams will get a nice catch and then take it upfield.
No,
but that doesn't happen every single time.
More work than you're giving him credit for. You are undervaluing Davante Adams and you're overhyping Aaron Rodgers. The fact remains that there is no way you can tell me that Aaron Rodgers is worth more to his team than Patrick Mahomes. I refuse to buy that. Listen, you're like GameStop. I will not buy from you.
You live in your fantasy world where Patrick Mahomes is the greatest quarterback of all time, but the reality is he is not the most valuable player in 2020.
Didn't I just say that he wasn't, and I wasn't saying that? So clearly you are not listening to my argument. I rest my case. Your Honor, I win.
The fact that you're even going there shows that you have no solid argument to back up why Patrick Mahomes is the most valuable player of the 2020 NFL season. He's not even the best team. If he's so good and he has all these pieces around him, why are the Steelers a better team?
The Steelers have one of the easiest schedules in NFL. What? The Chiefs are coming off a Super Bowl in which they won. They are the most targeted team in the NFL. What on earth are you talking about?
They're definitely not the most targeted team in the NFL. We're not talking about the Chiefs. We're talking about Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes has too many elite weapons around him. He has the number one player at two different positions on his team. That should put him at a disadvantage for MVP right off the bat. And the fact that his numbers aren't even better than Aaron Rodgers, as you've previously said, shows that he is definitely not the MVP of this season.
Yeah. No, Patrick Mahomes is the only choice to win MVP this year. He is Aaron Rodgers and then some. And if you're going to choose Aaron Rodgers, you're vastly undervaluing what Patrick Mahomes can do with a football.
But then maybe we need to rename this award to Best Player We've Seen This Year instead of Most Valuable Player.
If it's Most Valuable Player, Tom Brady would have won it every single year. It is Best Player of the Year. That's what it always has been.
Then give Tyreek Hill the award because there's no wide receiver.
No, I said give it to Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry deserves it more than any other player.
Yeah, I mean, Derrick.
But it always goes to a quarterback. Just how it is. All right. Well, since you clearly lost that debate, and I'm fine with that. Speaking of Derrick Henry had a day. Had a day that nobody talked about for reasons I can't understand.
Because he does it every week.
Maybe you guys can understand for me. Let me know if you understand this. Derrick Henry ran for 215 yards and 2 touchdowns against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Now, I understand that the competition wasn't necessarily there in the Jaguars. However, 215 yards and 2 touchdowns is nothing to scoff at. Derrick Henry passed Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, and LaDainian Tomlinson for the most 200-yard rushing games that also have two touchdowns. Is Derrick Henry the most dominant running back in today's game?
It's a tough question to answer because I look at
there's Alvin only Kamara. One person.
I look at Christian McCaffrey, I look at Dalvin Cook. These are guys they have different skill sets than Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry isn't a pass catching back. He is a downhill runner.
The question is dominant, not the best running back, not the best statistical running back. Is he the most dominant running back in today's game?
Are you talking about the position or the ability to run the football?
The position, the dominant running back.
I can't say that he is, because if we're talking about the most dominant, we're also talking about the best currently. And to me, Derrick Henry is not the best running back in the NFL. He has dominant games, but it's also the system in which he's in. So I think that guys like Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara, who are they're solid runners, but also are fantastic when they catch the ball, are the best. I'd rather have a dual threat running back than a one-sided running back in Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry catches the ball plenty. He's not known for it, but the fact remains that, I mean, he's a north to south runner, and when it comes to the end of the season, the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, there isn't a defense that wants to tackle him for 60 minutes. That is for damn sure. And the only reason I know that is because I faced him the last 2 years in fantasy. He bounced me out of the playoffs 2 years ago and kept me from the playoffs last year. That's why I drafted him this year. And 215 yards, 2 touchdowns, and passing the likes of Jim Brown, Barry Sanders, and LaDainian Tomlinson, I think that is pretty damn impressive, if you ask me. And if you want to talk about Alvin Kamara, sure,
it's impressive.
But you talk about the offense being conducive. What
the stat that you have referenced here is a niche stat. You're talking about a 200 rush yard game with 2 touchdowns. So it's very rare that anybody finds themselves in these situations. Derrick Henry is one of the elite running backs in the NFL. He is a top 5 running back in the NFL. But there are running backs that are in the NFL I'm taking ahead of him.
I don't necessarily agree, because I just think that Christian McCaffrey is way too injury prone. He just is. The overutilization of Christian McCaffrey has caused him to become fragile. Alvin Kamara is very good in the passing game, but I don't want him running the ball. I just don't. I don't think he's a very good running back. Ezekiel Elliott struggles when he doesn't have the offensive line to help him out, or a reputable quarterback to be able
Derrick
to.
Derrick Henry would struggle in the Cowboys offense too.
I don't necessarily think that's accurate.
Yeah, Derrick Henry doesn't find success until he's at the second level or third level. If he is stopped at the first level by the defensive line, or if the linebackers come up and stop him, that's why when they faced the Steelers were able to get to him. They have the big linebackers are able to stand up to him and stop him.
It wasn't even the linebackers. It was the defensive line when they got him. But they have massive guys like Cam Hayward who are just mammoth people. And I'm talking just overall. I mean, how many times are you facing the number 1 defense in the league in the Steelers?
It definitely helps that Derrick Henry is facing teams like Jacksonville and Houston and Indianapolis. When he faced DeForest Buckner, he was a no-show. He wasn't even there. As soon as DeForest Buckner's not there, he rushes for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. I mean, once the lack of competition that he's facing on the defensive side of the ball is what's helping him get all these yards. But as soon as he faces these big defensive guys that are able to stop him, that's when he kind of crumbles and gets 2-3 yards a carry, and they just stop utilizing him because he's not effective.
I think just to get back to the question, I do think he is the most dominant running back in the game.
Even if you don't want CMC or Alvin, I'm taking Dalvin Cook over him because he can catch the ball, and he's an extremely strong downhill runner who can also shift around guys. I mean, he is the most balanced all-around running back.
I think Dalvin Cook needs to prove it more than just the last year or two. I think because he is not the focal point of that offense. Everybody is keying in on stopping Derrick Henry. If you stop Derrick Henry, you're going to cause the Titans to struggle offensively. If you cause Dalvin Cook to struggle, Kirk Cousins can still run that offense with Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, Kyle Rudolph, and Irv Smith when he's available.
Ryan Tannehill is a very strong quarterback who's able to deal with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis.
Yes, but he needs the play action pass to be able to get that done. He needs to roll out of the pocket. He has designed plays to get that done. If you watch Tennessee Titans games, he needs Derrick Henry to be effective for them to be able to move the ball.
There have been games where Derrick Henry is ineffective and he's able to, and Tannehill has success.
The correlation stems from the fact that when Derrick Henry is ineffective, so is Ryan Tannehill. Look at the correlation. It's there. There's only been 2 times that I've seen in the last 2 years where Ryan Tannehill was able to overcome adversity that Derrick Henry was quote unquote ineffective. And both of those games, Derrick Henry came close to 100 yards rushing still. So I think that there's a lot left to be desired when it comes to other running backs because they are not the focal point. Derrick Henry is one of the last running backs that are the focal point of their offense.
Yeah, I mean the style of play that Derrick Henry has, that he gives, it's non-existent in today's NFL. It's not a hard-nosed, let me beat you down with my running back. It's let me find a way to scheme some creative play to get the ball into their hands without creating the least amount of contact. We're moving away from the full contact football.
I think that's another reason for Derrick Henry's success is a lot of these teams are built for the nickel defense or the dime defense where they have 6 or even 7 defensive backs out on the field, 1, maybe 2 linebackers, and that's pretty much it. Everybody else is much smaller, and I think a guy like Derrick Henry, who stands at 6'2" and weighs about 245, I think is what his last weigh-in was.
Right around there.
Mostly muscle. I mean, this man is just a behemoth. He's an offensive lineman with the speed of a receiver. I think that there is something to be desired when it comes to the size and speed that he possesses. I think that helps him a lot. Not necessarily his footwork or his ability to run the ball, but just those 2 abilities alone help him to become what I consider to be the most dominant running back in the game.
It all depends on the system you're in, and he's in the absolute perfect system for his style of play. That's why he's had so much success, is because the Titans have made him the priority. And without that, Derrick Henry is just another running back, but he's proven that he is one of the best in the NFL. There's no taking that away from him. But is he the most dominant? No.
Well, let us know what you guys think. Let us know if you think Derrick Henry is the most dominant running back in today's game. Let us know what you thought of today's episode. We're going to end it here. We're going to let you guys have your week. Christmas is right around the corner. Make sure that you guys are getting prepared for Christmas. We are all set and ready to be here for you guys during the Christmas season, and we will be here throughout. With that being said, more than 90% of you who view our content are not subscribed to the channel. Jason, if you're listening, I know you're there. I see you in the comments. I see you talking to us on Twitter. Jason, go subscribe to the YouTube channel. I'm tired of you. Okay. Subscribe to the channel. Make sure you like our content. Make sure you give it a good thumbs up, comment, let us know what you thought of some of the topics that we talked about. If you'd like to see more UFC content, let us know. We want to provide the content you guys want to see. We don't necessarily want to just dominate the conversation. In fact, I have talked to a couple of you on social media and said that we would like to feature some of your comments. So don't be afraid to interact with us on social media. We love talking to you guys. And I'm not afraid to go at you. So be prepared. If you're going to come after us for something, you better be prepared with some fighting words, because I'm coming strong. With that being said, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Enjoy yourself. Stay healthy, stay safe, and make sure to love each other. Peace and love, baby.